you really have to look at your book and find out who's just sucking the energy out of your people. Like in a hard market, I want to donate the bottom 10% of all my clients' customers to the competition and say, you deal with them.
It shouldn't be a transaction. You should be doing outcomes and building value, So we've got to change that in the insurance industry to become the outcome and to become the value.
Well, I'm super excited about this conversation because I think this is an area agents really struggle with, which is how to explain coverages, especially as we're in a hard market where there's this like mindset of I can't ask them, they can't spend any more money. And I know that you and I feel very differently about this compared to some of the people in the industry, right, Therese?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think people are just afraid they don't know the answer, and that's why they're afraid to educate people. And I think training is missing when it comes to educating clients, because sometimes we're not educated enough ourselves and we haven't had enough training to actually explain the coverages.
It's so true. And as we were kind of building this next, course of how to explain and sell top coverages, I was even sitting there and I was like, wow, like this course got pretty meaty pretty quick as I was going through, 60 plus coverages between personal lines, commercial lines, and life and health. Now, many people just do one, but the personal lines alone, it was, 25 plus coverages built into a policy. And then that's probably not even covering all the uniqueness if like you're with a certain carrier that has a very unique coverage that's not more mainline. And so I started thinking like, well, wow, like if I was a new agent today, this would be pretty overwhelming to learn. And I think we focus on those baseline coverages, right? Your auto liability, your home liability. And then we start going along and being like, hold on, I don't really understand incidental farming.
Well, and that's not to mention flood and coastal risks.
Sure.
Because I did a class the other day about the flood and coastal risks, and there's some concepts that I threw out there and they had no idea what they were. They had never heard of them before. And I only heard of them because of a claim.
Yeah. And that's the sad part because I think clients hire us to be their advisor. And if we're not educated, it's very difficult to explain it. But I think, we run so fast in insurance, right? That we don't always slow down and learn these coverages, or we don't use them that often. And that's another big one where, hey, if I don't use this coverage that often, am I going to remember that? Probably not. And that is one of the reasons that we started this kind of this course on how to explain the coverages, because when I do get somebody in this bucket, now I have a resource I can pull from and just say, oh, hold on. Let me help you with this real quick and go for it from there. But I think one of the biggest, struggles I see right now and why we're not, explaining coverages is people feel like they just don't have time. And so we've become a very, very transactional industry, which is so against the whole independent agent model of the relationship and the trusted advisor. And now today we're just picking up the phone and changing a vehicle. We're picking up the phone, we're sending the certificate. And we're not stopping sometimes and saying, hey, while I have you, let me do a quick review of everything.
Yeah. And I think we're missing out when we do that. The speaking event I was at recently, I was talking about this and I was like, we all have the same amount of hours in our day. It's just how we use them. And I said, where was I at 6 o'clock this morning? And they were all trying to guess. And I'm like, yeah, I was at the gym. I don't have any other time in my day. So I have to capitalize on those early mornings, and people who have young children and have to get kids to school. You have to find those hours in your day, and it's going to be different for everybody, but it's how we use those hours. So we have to start looking at our schedules, and we do have to start slowing down. I think our culture in general is a quick culture. Living in a foreign country, I learned that I was kind of rude, and they say that Americans are cold. Well, to be honest with you, it's true. And it's not. And it's not because we mean to be. It's because we're so driven and so fast paced. We forget to say, hello, good morning, how are you? and I think that's where we need to start. All of the agents out there, when you get on the phone, you need to say, hello, good morning, how are you? Because that right there will actually slow you down. And I learned that because where I lived in Guatemala, some people said, well, you seem rude all the time. So I had to start reminding myself, hello, good morning, how are you? Obviously in Spanish, but we need to find triggers that help us slow down. And sometimes we think the customer's in a hurry and they're really not in a hurry. Yes.
Well, and I also think, we feel this pressure because yes, there's emails and there's activities and there's other phone calls and in our world we want to crush the stack of work and then be like, okay, now I can. Like that's the mentality I think. It's like now I can cross sell because I got everything else done. And I was listening to a podcast yesterday and it kind of triggered when I was thinking about getting ready for this about like, and I believe in this guy said, I don't think that there's work life balance. I think there's rhythm, right? There's some times where, and I use an accountant for an example, like there's no work life balance during tax season. But during the summer, they make up for that. So it's a rhythm and you can't look at it like day to day to day or this week. You almost have to look at your day like, okay, well, today we're two people down. I need to be efficient and effective, but we're fully staffed and I haven't talked to this person in 5 years. That trigger also has to hit in your head of I need to do something. And even if something is sending them a quick email after the conversation, even if something is putting an activity out for yourself to say, hey, at the renewal, I want to call them and go over this. Something is better than nothing. But I just see so many agencies just head down, transacting, 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 transacting. And I think we're missing the bigger picture of how are we going to keep these customers in a hard market when our interactions are just the bare minimum of the expectation.
Well, and we have to consider when somebody calls in to change a vehicle, if it's 3 months into their policy, when that vehicle's added, usually the bill went out for that fourth month and they're only going to have 2 more months to pay that bill. And we never explain even that. And then the customer ends up having to call back. Why did I let it go so much? Because I had this bill and there's no way. And it's because we never explained it. So if we're not even explaining what the change did to the policy, I mean, how do we expect our customers to understand any of it? So we do have to, slow down to speed up. And that basically means we slow down, we talk to the customer, we go over details, and we're speeding up because then that customer is not calling back angry and upset and wanting, what is going on? And then you have to calm them down. So if
Yeah.
you do the front end work by explaining and educating the client, then you don't have to do the back end work of trying to calm them down once they call upset because they don't understand.
Well, and then we took a little withdrawal from the client piggy bank of goodwill, right? Because they were upset. So now they're like, what is going on? Why are you people doing this to me? And that is a tricky part. So I think the first step is everybody's got to slow down, listen. And in order to slow down, I just want to encourage everybody. You really have to look at your book and find out who's just sucking the energy out of your people. Like in a hard market, I want to donate the bottom 10% of all my clients' customers to the competition and say, you deal with them because it's not getting anywhere. And your team is so stuck dealing with these people. And then they can't get out to the people who are the sleeper cells, like myself, who probably wouldn't call. But if I wasn't in insurance and my rate went up and I never heard from anybody, I would start thinking I have to go look around, right? And might find coverage gaps. And then it's like, I can save some money and they found some coverage gaps because no one's talked to me. So of course I'm going to move, but we're going to code down our system as price. We need a code that is indifference and that we didn't do our job of reaching out and making sure that people are there. And so I really encourage people to think through that. The next thing I want to talk about is, this belief factor that we have to get over. And when we're talking about coverage, and I know that this is very hard, and I think I got so good at it working at a bank because I could see what was in people's bank accounts, right? Now you couldn't do that today. The world was a different place 20 years ago, right? But I was between insurance and the teller line and I saw all these things, or I started in on the teller line and knew what they had, just by memory. And there's just this terrified fear of talking about increasing coverage because it's going to cost people money. And we had this before the hard market, Therese, right? Like this was here before. But now I think we're agency leaders are even getting in that mindset. Well, we don't want to, I mean, they might leave. And I always say, you know what they're going to do? They're going to be leave when they have a claim and they don't have the coverage.
Yeah, the don't poke the sleeping bear concept. I mean, it's going to be poked regardless, whether it be through a letter they receive or something the carrier does. You never know when that's going to happen. So the more proactive we are in speaking to our customers and letting them know that they have questions to talk to us and trying to review their policies, every year, then we that poking bear concept disappears. You don't have it anymore because the customers know who you are. They know your name. I mean, in some of the webinars and the meetings we've done, I've said, how many of your customers know your name compared to the carrier? because they see stuff from the carrier because they know who they're covered by, but they don't know their agent's name. And
Right.
I love your story about when you broke your ankle and you asked the
I'm not
doctor.
breaking my ankle, but yes, like it would,
Yeah,
that's a value in the long run.
yes. But looking at a doctor who's trying to tell you that you need surgery and asking them, what's my name? And them not knowing, it was like, holy moly, that is just a whole concept. So I said to, the agents, how many of your customers know your name? And some of them were like, oh, so if they don't even know your name, then how are you bringing value to a conversation? I'm amazed nowadays with customer service. I called the billing department for my son's knee surgery yesterday, and they speak real soft and they don't even say their names. And I'm like, if you don't tell me your name, how am I going to know who I'm talking to? So I try to repeat their name several times in the conversation, even as somebody who is, they're supposed to give me great customer service. I'm kind of
They should be doing that for you.
yes,
Yes.
yes.
It's funny you say that because I always do that at restaurants. I always ask like the waiter or waitress's name. I'm like, what's your name? Because first of all, you should see their face, right? They're like,
Yes. Well, and sometimes they're like, "Oh, she wants to know my name because there's something bad."
I do it up front before bad things happen.
Well, and I called the health insurance before I did this, and I spoke to somebody named Colleen, and I said, and I said her name several times, and at the end of the conversation, I said, "Colleen, you've been super helpful today. If you want to send me a link to review you, I would love to give you a positive review." And the really funny thing is she never did. I was like, I'm giving you great opportunity to, tell your manager that you did a good job. But we have to slow down and think through things, and we have to be better. We have to realize that before COVID, we jumped through things. We did everything transactionally. And our 12 question quiz, every single one, almost all of them, it asks, are your employees trying to get transactions or outcomes? And all of them said transactions, all of them.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a transaction. You should be doing outcomes and building value, so we've got to change that in the insurance industry to become the outcome and to become the value instead of price, because we ourselves have done the damage and made it about price because we're constantly, oh, let me requote that for you and get you a cheaper price. And we've built that.
We have built it, but I want to say something very directly to agency leaders listening out there. Stop believing your team doesn't have time. Start looking at where they're spending their time. Okay. I can guarantee you, I mean, I've been in several agencies this fall, and they're like, well, we can't. Yeah, they're on their phone. One of them was no first call resolution. We've been over first call resolution a million times. So they spend all this time on a call. Then they're writing out their notes and they have to go process it. Oh, and another call comes in. Of course, we're going to be backlogged. And then we listen to recorded phone calls and people are spending 13 minutes talking about their grandkids' Halloween costumes. Great for a report, but that needs to be a minute or two. There's like this scenario here. And so I always say there's plenty of time if the leadership can come in and organize people's time for them and be very direct in what needs to happen. But first call resolution has to happen in this market. We have to get rid of our bottom feeding clients. We have to. We have to get people to use portals and use VAs and do all these things. Like the agency we were just at, they have all the tools. Nobody's using them. And they're drowning and dying and, just like about to walk out. And I said, that's because they're choosing to poison themselves every single day. That's what's happening. And I got into the leadership space about it. And I said, and you are not holding them accountable to all the work we've done for the last year and a half. You're letting them go because you look at it like, oh, we're down a person and a half. And I said, you're not, because the manager's stepping in on some of this stuff. And you're more efficient and you have virtual assistants now. That is in your head and it's not true. What's untrue is that they're not using the virtual assistant. So they want to tell you that they're down a body and a half, but the facts are different. And they were very appreciative that I got kind of direct with them on it. But same thing with your team. If you're not explaining coverages because you're so busy, cut out the freaking busy work then. Get rid of it and start explaining coverages because it's something a licensed agent can do. And when they're doing non-licensed work and there are resources and tools, it's the definition of insanity. And we do this all the time because we're so scared a staff member is going to walk out if we hold them accountable. so that people do whatever they want. And it's like the Wild West at most agencies today. And the staff is pissed and the leadership is pissed. And you know who hurts the most? Our freaking clients, because they're not getting the actual recommendations they need. Think about water sewer backup, $10,000 water sewer backup. $10,000 4 years ago is different than $10,000 today.
Absolutely. Yeah, for real.
We should be on every call explaining this to people, at least giving the client the option and not being so terrified of, well, it's going to cost them more money. Yeah. And so is their finished basement. And so when are they going to be mad at you? They're going to be mad because they're spending an extra $30? Or when you ask them the question of what would it cost to remodel your whole basement? Well, it was $20,000 when we did it. Well, now it'd probably be 40.
Yeah, and in those coverages, we would find coverages that were missing on policies. So we would run a list of any policy missing those coverages, and then we would start doing outbound calls to upsell those coverages. So if that's the case, look for those opportunities to upsell different coverages, and at the time of upselling, that's when you can review those policies as well.
I just think we have to get out of this mindset. And I just see so many people stuck in the hard market mindset. And I'm going out to speak here. And the first thing I'm going to say is, the first thing is we're not using the word hard market in 2024. It's the market. This is the market. We're going to be here for 3 years. We didn't call it a soft market. So let's just call it the market. Let's get over the fact it's hard. We had a whole year to digest and process and grieve it. And now we need to play on today's playing field and today's games. But, just to kind of wrap it up, I think the last reason why people really struggle is, one, they don't understand the coverages, which is why we created this course. But two, I think like the next level, the hitting your potential, means that when someone says, no, I don't want to spend more money on my insurance, we need to know what to say. Because so many people just be like, okay, and we document our file. And that is the baseline of a good job. We recommended it. We documented the file. We're cool from an E&O perspective. This person's finished basement is wildly uninsured. And we just move on to the next thing. And I'm like, oh, everybody out of the pool. That person said no to something they don't even understand what we're talking about, because we just kind of put it out there. So what are your thoughts on how to overcome some of those objections?
Well, first of all, training and making sure your staff understand the coverages completely. Once they understand the coverage, then you have to turn around and say, so every client that calls into you, you need to pretend that's your house.
Yeah, I agree.
Or that's your mom's house or your dad's house or a family member's house. And you need to convince that person, like it was a family member, that they need that coverage. And you need to explain why. And yes, we understand it may increase prices, but the problem is when that claim happens and they don't have the coverage, who are they going to blame? You're going to blame you. You're going to blame you. Yeah. I mean, just like not having life insurance at all. I mean, my mom had never had life insurance except for through work. And when she moved in with me, and not anymore, but I was like, I was like, you have to have something. So we got her a simplified policy. So if something happens, my brother and I aren't trying to get all this money and try to pay for that. So we really, really, really have to look at our customers as our friends and our family and just say, okay, if I were you, this is what I would do as an educated professional licensed insurance agent. If I was in your situation, this is what I would do. So we have to educate them as if they are someone close to us, and we don't want them losing. We don't want them the day of a claim not having and having to go through, the sorrow and the anger of not having it.
Yeah, I think, the whole idea is we have to get passionate. And when people see we're passionate and that we care, they really do think about that coverage differently. And there's so many people just focusing on those tasks, not the outcome of like, well, I asked, she didn't want an umbrella. I'll never forget it. Like I had one person come back to me and said, and she's like, I asked every single client I talked to this month about an umbrella policy and none of them wanted it. I was like, first of all, why would you say that out loud? Second of all, why would you say that in front of the owner of the agency and me? Because what you're doing is you're not asking correctly. like if you asked 100 people, would you want me to quote an umbrella? And all of them said no. The answer is in the mirror.
That they don't know what an umbrella is.
Yeah. And like you just explained it in a way that was confusing or complicated or sounded costly. Like you explained it to somebody to prove a point to me that people didn't want umbrellas. But this is such a waste of time and energy. And like, I'm so glad that you're so bad at umbrella sales that now you've just opened it up to talk about how you said it. It's the same thing with renewal calls. We hear people all the time say, well, is now a good time? I want to go over your insurance renewal. If I got that, I'll be like, no. No, but if you said, hey, I'm calling because your insurance renewal is coming up, there's a couple things I need to go over and I want to check for discounts. It's gonna take a couple minutes. Can I just confirm your contact information? I'm gonna roll. Like we don't realize sometimes the influence that we have, right?
Yeah, we need to hook them. Like getting people to call back. Well, call me if you're interested, or let me know if you need any help. No. Hey, I've found that there might be some discounts on your policy. Give me a call back. I look forward to hearing from you. Try to get them, convince them in a voicemail to call you back. Hey, this is Therese from your insurance agency. I have a big question about your insurance policy. Give me a call back. Don't give them too much information in a voicemail so they won't call you back, because the whole point of leaving a voicemail is to get a call back.
So let's go ahead and, just remember, guys, you have to explain the coverages. It's why we exist. We don't exist to do transactions. We exist to give counsel, which is why your state requires you to have a license. And I think that that's such a critical component of being successful. So thank you, Therese, for joining me today.
No problem. Thank you. And I hope everybody educates themselves and starts educating their customers and builds value instead of trying to just talk about that price. It's not all about the rate and the price. It's about the coverages and protecting our clients.
I love it. All right, guys, we'll see you soon.